Former President Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records in his New York hush money trial this week. Trump is able to appeal the motion, but he potentially faces a prison sentence, probation, home confinement, or a larger fine. Trump is still able to campaign outside of the state of New York, even if on probation, and can still run and serve as president if elected. Trump's sentencing date is set for July 11th, just days before the RNC chooses their 2024 Republican nominee. Let's now talk to some younger voters and get their reaction to this historical criminal conviction. Joining me now, recent Virginia Tech graduate Jack Leff and young voter and host of the People You Want to Know podcast, Margarita Lyadova. And thank you for being here. We appreciate both of you being here today. Jack, I want to ask you first, according to recent polls, 67% of voters say former President Trump's guilty verdict had no sway on who they were going to vote for in the 2024 presidential election in November. Did this verdict sway your vote?
Well, I think that it's not super surprising that it didn't have much of an impact on Trump's voting base. They seem very much to be willing to ride with him no matter what happens. I was not a fan of Trump prior to the guilty verdict, and I'm certainly not a fan of him after the guilty verdict.
And Margarita, what about you?
I would agree. I think that's right.
So former President Donald Trump, he's promising to also crush anti-war protests on college campuses. I was curious how you feel about that and what Trump is saying about this.
Yeah, so I think Trump's rhetoric here is deeply concerning for folks who value democracy, and I don't think it would be hyperbolic to call it fascist. We've seen clearly what he's willing to do to back up this kind of rhetoric. During 2016 and 2020, I went to probably over 100 protests and saw firsthand how this sort of speech emboldens police violence. And it worries me deeply that we might see another 4 years of that. However, what complicates things a little bit for me as a grassroots activist and also a young voter is how little daylight there seems to be between Trump's rhetoric and the Democrats' actions. It's noteworthy that all the current encampments for Palestine on university campuses are taking place in these liberal cities. It's Democrats who are ordering the crackdowns on the protesters currently. And if Biden wants to win progressive votes, which I think he needs to do to beat Trump, it's pretty clear that he needs to do more to distinguish himself and stop issuing blank checks to Israel and the police.
I was going to ask you about that too, just the reaction to President Biden's handling of this as well. But Margarita, I want to get to you on what you make of Trump, and then also if you want to comment on how President Biden's been handling the conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Absolutely. So I am Jewish and I run a Jewish podcast, and I do think that unfortunately the Democrats have not done enough to support Israel and the Jewish people. I believe that the changes that need to happen at the academic level and on college campuses, however, do not have very much to do with the president. There are systemic issues that we need to change in our society in order to see better campuses and stronger students. And I am worried that if the Democrats don't change their talking points, that the issue of Israel and the fate of the Jewish people will become an issue that the Republicans dominate.
Are you happy with how President Biden has handled this so far? His speech he gave at the White House and another one, I believe, on Capitol Hill recently about addressing anti-Semitism. Are you, impressed by the steps that he's taking, or it's just not been enough?
This is a hard question. I think on some issues, Biden has done a really nice job in supporting the Jewish people and Israel. And on others, I'm not happy with his stance.
And what about you, Jack? How has President Biden addressed what's been happening on college campuses across the country? We can assume that they will also be outside of the Democratic National Convention this summer. More protests expected there as well. How do you think he's addressing these student voices?
Yeah, I think he's been deeply unsatisfactory, although I have a different take than my other panelists. I'm also Jewish and I'm an activist. I was part of the encampment in my local university, and my university president actually had me arrested as part of 82 arrestees. And quite frankly, I think this is a common story across the country. And I certainly don't think that Joe Biden is doing enough to address anti-Semitism, but I don't think the solution to that is to continue to double down on his unequivocal support for Israel. I think what he needs to do is to stop arresting Jewish protesters who are fighting for human rights.
Thank you both for your time. Such great insight from both of you, and getting the perspective of younger voters as well. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.